Westtown has been one of those partners. But tell me a little bit about what makes them different, because they've got good tools now, but we know that. But tell me about the people. What makes them different?
Yeah, I mean, Westtown it's a fabulous experience banking with them. From Ross Sloan, who I first met as, the account manager that was connecting with me. And I said, now, Ross, if I'm going to look at Westtown, I first want to see a demo of your online features, because I right now can't get wires and ACHs with separate levels of approval so that my accounting team can enter these and do all these things. I want to do a test run on this. He's like, no problem, we'll get it done. They got test runs done for me. They met with all of my team. I was able to get all of my team comfortable with the banking relationship. And once we got set up, they said, hey, you can email us at commercial services. We will always answer you right back. And I have never found a day, when it has been less than 10 minutes or less than 2 minutes. Really, commercial services is right there at every turn. And the reason I like them is at other credit unions, we might have one, directed person. And if that person's out to lunch and you have an emergency wire, you're not going to hear from anybody. But the way that Westtown has it is into this like group support. They support you very quickly. They get everything you need. There have been times we didn't know how to come up with a solution for some check that got returned. They're like, don't worry, we'll go and FedEx it out for you right now here from Raleigh, North Carolina. And here we are in Colorado. So they just excel and excel and excel. And then they start excelling more. They blow us away every single day with their support. Their online interface is beautiful. And it's really we were able to go down a full head in our department just because of Westtown's online interface is so strong.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so, I work with a lot of institutions across the country. I mean, anywhere from, smaller than that, 60 million in assets up to 10 billion in assets. And that's the secret sauce. It's a combination of having the right experience for you as a business, because that experience matters. Yes. And just because there's only a limited number of cannabis banks and credit unions doesn't mean that they can, there's the luxury to be ugly or to have challenging tools or, to not support you well, right? Customer service is not dead. We need to do that. And I think that's the best part I love about community banks and credit unions is that they care about that versus, the Chases and the Wells Fargos and, you won't even put in there before they turn you around, right? And so Westtown's the epitome of that for sure. Tell me a little bit about your communication back and forth. So, you open the account with RiskScout and you did some other setup stuff with Westtown, but then what happens kind of on a regular basis, right? And I'm going to compare that to the way it was before. You mentioned some of those things earlier, but just kind of curious.
For sure. So at the end of every month, or I should say the first or second day of the month, I get an email from RiskScout saying, please upload your revenues for the month of July. And I'll get one of those for each of the entities I have. Simple. I just go into we happen to have Sage as our ERP. Some people use QuickBooks, but whatever you have as your backup, as your, software service, I just upload it right into RiskScout. It's done. I do that every single month regularly. If I've got a license expiring, I get a notice. It says, hey, this license is about to expire, heads up. And we have a compliance team. I send RiskScout my provisional certificate and say, hey, Colorado's really backed up. They're like, no problem. We have the provisional certificate on hand. And then they'll say, hey, we're still waiting for that license. And we'll say, hey, we're still waiting for the state. And every time they're like, no problem, we got it. We'll update the chart. We'll update this. So it's so easy when RiskScout has anything, anything that they're automatic triggers for things expiring. It's a simple email. It's a simple upload interface with RiskScout. And whenever I have a question or they're asking for a response, it's immediate in terms of the communication back and forth. So compare 10 minutes a month to upload my revenues for the month, compare, 5 minutes here and there to upload a new license versus someone coming to sit on our campus for 8 hours to talk through every single detail. It's a game changer.
Yeah. And let's just address the on-site audit piece. We, as money laundering professionals, anti-money laundering professionals, I should say, and helping banks understand this, we do encourage our banks to come out and do more relationship visits. Now,
Yes.
what it sounds like you're getting more of is they're actually trying to get more of an education and, come out and ask a bunch of questions that they might not even know kind of the context of what they're asking. And again, I don't blame any institution who wants to come out and learn and understand the customer better, because I think if they're trying to do that, there's a genuine interest. But if you're taking a day out of every month or quarter, it can be very difficult. I mean, to prepare for that, to try to understand where they're going, and then you probably have the question, and I would have the question, I'm on the backside, what are you doing with that information? Are you really using that to say, hey, Jen's following all these rules? So I'll just say that we generally recommend on sites when necessary, usually when there's certain circumstances or other things, but not as an automatic. And we also recommend, that what they call the BSA officers, right? The compliance people at the bank actually come out and visit with you a little bit to understand your business. But there's a difference between that and it sounds like what some of the other institutions were doing, huh?
Sure. Well, yeah, and I should clarify. So we do still have site visits. So Westtown will send someone out, and that person will tell us in advance, hey, here's what we're looking for when we come out to your, say, dispensary. We're looking to make sure that your license is in full view and that it hasn't expired, to make sure that you have these things posted in your employee areas. Like the things that talk about legitimate business, we need to understand where the safes are and those kind of security features. And they come in and they pop into a dispensary, or they'll head down to Salida to our cultivation facility. They'll make sure that they'll just make sure that, yes, we're growing plants. So they kind of pop in and say, we just need to make sure that the legitimacy of this business, that you are who you say you are, that your building is where your building says it is. And so I work at a corporate setting, so I'm not on the facilities where the folks are visiting, but my whole team says, oh, night and day, somebody comes in, they want to chit chat, they're here, they're in and out in 20 to 30 minutes. So that's the difference in the kind of visit we're getting now versus sometimes before, when it was a whole day. I thought, well, no wonder we're paying these exorbitant fees. They have to staff to have these people stay out for full days.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I don't know if you've used this functionality, but a lot of the smaller businesses, the farmers and dispensaries, they like to respond on the tasks or the checkpoints with their phone sometimes. So maybe I'm asking about your security system. Instead of having to come out and look at it, I can get you to snap a picture, or maybe your license is framed on the wall and it's kind of a pain to take it down and scan it in and all that, to use the phone. And so we actually see, I think it's over 50% on sort of short-term, smaller kind of things actually answer on their phone, which is, I think it's this big success for me because, let me put it in the words of one of my BSA officers. She said, when my farmers came in the other day and he was literally on the tractor, he stopped, he answered the question, took a picture of his field and kept going. Like, not have to come back to the HQ,
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it is so simple. Like, we have dispensary managers that, they're right in the store. They can take a picture and they can upload it right on the spot. Or they can send me their picture, I can put it right on. So I have that unique, or not so unique that I'm kind of a desk job person. But yeah, the app, I could use it anywhere, anytime, any place, and any hours, which is so nice that you're not just putting it into a secured box, have to log on, go sit at a desktop to do it. And then you hope that you're going to hear back that it was accepted.
Yeah. Well, good. This has been really great. I want to kind of shift gears just a little bit. A lot of our audience would be, financial institutions, whether it might be the C-levels or business development side, or of course the compliance side. But another part of our audience are the businesses themselves, other people like you. And actually, I'd say people who haven't maybe found their partner institution yet, And so, what would you, in terms of what would you share with them in terms of businesses that are in the industry, and some tips and tricks that you can talk about? We can make it around banking if you want, kind of financial services, but what would you share as advice to them for helping to get kind of the place where you got, which is pretty stable banking?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that I would ask is, hey, are you looking for your customers to come in to do wires, to do ACHs, or do you have separate levels of approval and an online interface that you can show me? So I have quickly learned that, when I was in the non-cannabis world, I could go in and I could know that whether the company banked with Wells Fargo or Chase, they're going to have an interface that works, like no problem. And so I've learned to ask the question of what is their kind of technology landscape within the bank. Another thing I've really learned is that you can ask banks for a reduced fee and they'll do it. So you can, if banks say, well, we charge for that level of account, we charge $3,500. And I had one bank that I said, look, this is going to be my redundancy bank account that I'm holding now. So can you do a redundancy account for $500 a month? They're like, absolutely. So I've learned that if you ask, they'll do. And I really encourage people, just for safekeeping in cannabis, without safe banking, I always keep, I keep the large majority of my accounts one place and then one account somewhere else, just so I have a redundant bank. And so that's what I also encourage people to do. And I really share with people, if banks want you to pay a percentage of your revenue on your dispensaries, find a different bank, because they don't all do that, even though you might think they do. And if you go into a bank and you say, do you have RiskScout? Do you have RiskScout? How do you onboard? I will never again not ask that question. How do you onboard? Because in the non-cannabis world, or the non kind of high risk world, you take for granted what onboarding's like. You take for granted the interface. You take the fees for granted. You're looking at your treasury service bill, say, okay, is my treasury service bill under $1,000 for my $100 million company? Great, moving on. So these are things I've really learned to ask that have been really helpful.
That's great. And so you mentioned just kind of, some of those points are actually good points, I guess, to the financial institution as well. One of the really big reasons why I wanted to do this interview with you is because we don't get to see the face in the human element as much when we're talking to our institutions, or they're talking to us about banking the space, right? It's always the space. And, you get a lot of really bad press around cannabis that's all kind of worked up. And, and then you've got all these really great things, especially Colorado, the tax dollars and all the things that are kind of coming to the community, the safety. But, what would you share with the FIs just to explain why these things are important? So you mentioned digital tools. Let me ask it this way.
Yeah, sure.
The pandemic, let's ask it this way. How have digital tools changed for you? And how would you talk to a bank that's listening to this to say, hey, this is what you need in order for me to be able to come and bank with you because of what the needs are today, not 2 years ago even, but today?
Right. So I would say, the way that our team is structured, we don't have a corporate office anymore. So we don't have a group of 5 people working together where we, collect all the checks and then someone's going to walk to the bank and make the deposit anymore. The days of somebody within the company going to the bank to make the deposit are over. Even companies with small offices now, it's in cannabis, are using, the armored car service to go do it. So you gotta have these relationships with the armored car services so we can do it that way. I would say that when we get a check, we're all looking to scan it, right there. A lot of banks are like, oh, we have mobile deposit, but you can only, and so we'll say, great, mobile deposit's super helpful. But at the same time, if we have 40 checks, then it's going to take somebody all night. So scanners are important for us. Mobile deposit is still important. So if we get that one big check, it's important for us, for ourselves, to be able to, we need to be able to do the wiring ourselves. Like we want self-service. We want our bill pays, we want our transfers, we want our wires, we want all of these basic functionalities. As finance people that we had before we came into a high risk industry, we are still looking for the person who will offer us that same type, same suite of products and that same ease. We're looking for people that are always innovating. If we go to places and we have one person and that person's our contact, and so if that person's on lunch, and so it will be 3 hours before we hear from them, like we're looking for a more innovative, service-oriented bank that will give us all the bells and whistles that we need to keep going, because we're not in offices, we're not together, we're not at desks, and so we need to be able to anywhere, anytime, anyway, have access to our bank.
Yeah. That's great. I feel compelled to ask you a question here around safe banking. A lot of the rhetoric that goes around safe banking is, it's a half measure. We need to improve legalization. We need to do other things and not just this thing. But I think and I don't disagree with some of those things,
Sure.
but at the same time, I don't think people who are not the people that are on the outside that aren't in your seat really
Sure.
understand the
Mhm.
impact right now and what safe banking would do. I mean, the
Sure.
misconception is that safe banking kind of fleaces the banking system and the wealthy people's ability to do cannabis, right? That's kind
Yeah.
of the rhetoric that's out there.
Sure.
But can you just tell me, I mean, it doesn't even have to be safe banking, but the concept behind approving those basic sort of rights
Oh, yeah.
for you as a business, what would that do for you? Tax implications, anything, but like, what does that do for you if that were to change?
Yeah. So, I mean, what it does for us is, right now, we want customers to be able to come into our dispensaries and easily use a debit card or credit card, the same as you would if you're going into a grocery store. We want customers to be able to use their financial products, for us, the same way that we can go into any other store. Another area for safe is, we have, for example, if someone wants to sell a building, a landowner wants to sell, their land and their building, and they have a strip mall and a dispensary happens to be in it. Well, right now, we're just kind of out of luck, because if the new buyer goes to get a loan, then the loan will not go through if there's a cannabis client. So if you have a cannabis store in the strip mall you want to buy, the cannabis client's got to go. So we've got to just be at the whim and go unless someone's going to do a cash deal, which is really challenging for us. When we have investors to come into the space, we have investors who say, look, I'm in X, Y, and Z industries, and so I can't put any money in with you because it would touch my other holdings, and this one's not legal. So there's things like that. And then just the scrutiny around the work around deposits and, stapling an invoice to every single deposit. There just needs to be an easier way for us to do business. And people have no idea until they get into cannabis that they realize, oh my goodness, I didn't know you couldn't just go to any Bank of America and open an account. So it's really challenging.
Yeah. And I would definitely say to all those points is, the word would be that if safe banking were to pass, then you'd have FFIC and the regulatory bodies that would actually create real regulations that we could follow, and, not be this sort of circus of things that people think you need to do. And at the end of the day, it's up to any bank or financial institution, insurance company to make their own judgment for their risk management. But the problem is without definition of what you're held accountable to, the judgment can be, here or down here, right? It's
Right.
it's a wide spread of differences, which means it ripples back to everything you do. And then, of course, hopefully IRS deductions and all those sort of things would come into play, and just not having to use cash. That's a safety thing as well.
Oh,
Well, thank you so much on that topic. Is there, I'll just give you any final things that you'd like to share, with either other businesses like yourself or other banks and credit unions that might be watching this?
I would, I would probably encourage banks on their fees to, shop other banks, other credit unions, because what's happening in cannabis is prices are coming down. It used to take 3 and 4 years when a state was newly legalized with cannabis for their prices to come down. Now we're seeing price compression happen in about 18 months. So when all of a sudden, we used to be able to sell something for $1,100 a pound, and now it's $400 a pound, but yet the banks and the credit unions are still charging us kind of these premium fees. Bank fees just eat into your profit really quickly. So I'd really consider people to kind of shop around on the pricing. And I would just really, really encourage innovation. If you're still doing things that are paper, that need to be signed and scanned back and then a secure email, I would really encourage you to move to platforms that, like RiskScout, allow you to just, upload a link and call it a day. The number of people coming into these high risk industries from your standard industries is significant. So a lot of people now are coming into cannabis, and a lot of people in finance and accounting are very used to, an easy life with their banking life. And so anything you can do to kind of look like what people are used to, and if you can level that up, that's great. But when we come in and you say, we have the best service and we're the nicest people, And so we come bank, but then the tools aren't there. That's when it kind of falls apart. So that's what I would just encourage people to do is, and Westtown would be a great case study on how to look at the landscape and how to make your money off of volume. Because like you mentioned, there's cash. Like company like us, I mean, I think, your mid-sized companies probably they probably usually have 5 to 10 million in the bank. Whereas if I'm with a smaller company, you might have $1 million in the bank, a non-traditional bank, because you're sweeping it and doing all these other things. In cannabis, we're just leaving it there. So we're really ripe. We're great clients. You want access to our money, we want to give it to you. We just want to have an easy life when it comes to banking.
Yeah, that's a great summary. A lot of institutions, just even in this last year, because of the macro market conditions, are struggling in the mortgage business. They're struggling in traditional businesses, and here's an opportunity. It's not that difficult to do it, but to your point, you need the tools. You need to kind of look at your market, and that's what we're here to help you with. But we're also happy to help point people to whatever they might need. So thank you so much. This has been a great interview, and I think it's going to help a lot of people sort of put a face with the name, see the human side of these businesses, and to really understand some of the struggles you go with. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Justin. Have a great day.